You're now locked into Zone 32.
Max Mikado, Grant Derflinger, Jake Miller.
Only on NeutralZoneInfractions.com.
NZI Properties.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the debut edition of Neutral Zone Infractions' new sister podcast, Zone 32, our new All 32 podcast here on NZI. Follow us on Twitter at NZI Properties. I'm your host, Max Mikado, joined now by two of our resident experts on the website, Grant Derflinger and Jake Miller. Grant, Jake, say hi.
Yo, what it do?
Welcome to the party, my people. Ready for some fun convo.
Now, folks, we've rehearsed this 50 billion times. I don't know how they haven't come up with anything more original to say than what it do and yo, yo, yo and all that. So I don't know. We'll work on that after the fact. So, but we're going to get right into it. We've got a lot to cover tonight. First off, breaking news as of this very moment. Former Jets running back Le'Veon Bell has just signed with the Kansas City Chiefs. There's a lot to unpack on just this bit alone. Grant, let's get the ball rolling with you. What are your thoughts and reactions to this news?
I mean, right out of the gate, I pretty much, said that was, his main destination from the jump, just because, look, in the NFL, there's obviously not a salary cap. Look at the Rams. There's ways around everything. Dude's already making $6 million on the back end of the season this year. What better reason than to not go sign with a Super Bowl contender, potentially put yourself in position? He's not getting younger, the injuries, those types of things. But at the end of the day, goes, signs, remaining deal for the rest of this year. Boom. Next year, if he plays well, they win big in the playoffs, then he's going to sign his last multi-year deal of his career, versus just kind of signing something now, see what happens. And then we got another Jets fiasco. I think it's a good fit. Hopefully it doesn't crush the demeanor for Clyde Edwards-Helaire. I know he's, a team guy, rookie, but, he was the bell cow. And for them to think, hey, we got to bring in another guy, that's got to, you got to start thinking a little bit there. But yeah, I think it's a great fit. I hate it as a Ravens fan. Come on, dude, like rich get richer, but we're not scared of them. But yeah, I think it's a good fit. I thought it was either going to be the Chiefs. My dark horse was the Falcons. But who knew at that point? He could have really gone anywhere. He had his choice, but I think, we called it, and it is what it is.
See, I thought he would have gone to Tampa just to, take advantage of the lack of income tax for most Floridians down there. But on top of that, to play with Brady, Fournette, all of them. But whether or not there was interest, that we'll never know. But Jake, you and I were talking off air just before this recording about the impact on the rest of the Chiefs backfield. Let's talk a little bit more now. Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he had that breakout week 1 performance, but he's dropped off the face of the earth since. What does this mean now for fantasy impact for the Chiefs as a viable option here?
I think Bell's the one to own in that backfield now. He's got the more proven track record. We're going to find out if he has anything left in the tank, because he looked nothing compared to the dude that was terrorizing the AFC North from 2014 to 2017 with his year in New York last year. So, Adam Gase, he misuses his talent. It's pretty obvious. That was apparent with Ryan Tannehill and Devontae Parker last year and this year. So we're going to find out, but I think he's the one to own in that backfield. Edwards-Helaire is definitely taking a back seat to that. And pretty sure Darrell Williams is going to be inactive on most days now.
And I'm also thinking long-term, too, because next season, Damian Williams is due back, assuming that things are, quote-unquote, back to normal by next fall. But it makes me wonder, what happens with Bell and Edwards-Helaire and both Williamses at that point. I don't know. We'll see. We'll get to Adam Gase in just a bit, but let's loop back around. This is a perfect opportunity to segue into the Chiefs and Bills game this weekend. Now, both teams just lost in upsets of two different magnitudes. You had the Chiefs losing in the most dramatic fashion in an AFC West shootout. You had the Bills lose in just spectacularly disappointing fashion in a game that they were favored against the Tennessee Titans, who had been unable to legally practice all week because of COVID protocol violations. Grant, take us into that game. What are your thoughts moving forward this weekend with the Chiefs and Bills both looking to rebound?
I think it's a good opportunity for both teams. The Bills, Josh Allen just didn't look like Josh Allen. I would credit that game more towards the Bills didn't really play up to their capacity. Titans are a good team. They are what they are, but everything kind of went their way. They pretty much controlled the momentum, controlled the clock, those type of things. Chiefs, I think the Chiefs are getting a little cocky. You look at them on social media, they're dancing around, they're praising, they're unbeatable, those types of things. It's any given Sunday, man. And when you play a rivalry game like that, I mean, that's a big rivalry. It might not seem like that nowadays to like a lot of newer football fans, but as far as like the overall history of the NFL, it's a huge rivalry and they can't stand each other. And, for the Raiders to come out, everybody takes their shots at the Raiders. John Gruden gets a lot of criticism. Like, it is what it is. He's a great coach at the end of the day. He got $100 million for a reason. He has turned around that franchise to an extent. And I mean, surprised me. I mean, I don't think anybody really picked the Raiders to come out there and smack the Chiefs around. But at the end of the day, you could see there was a lot of humble pie being eaten after the game in the Chiefs locker room. Hopefully they can hop off of their dance parties and take off their platform shoes and then maybe try to play football again. But I'm really looking forward to see, how teams kind of play off of that, because between the Patriots game and that game, the offense is starting to get kind of figured out a little bit in the most sense that it can get quote unquote figured out. But they're beatable. I mean, and that's been shown. And I think that it was a great game. And like you said, two different magnitudes. But I looked for it to be a good competitive game. I want to see which Josh Allen shows up. Interested to see how the Bills defense bounces back from a subpar game against Ryan Tannehill. So, I mean, there's a large difference between Ryan Tannehill and Patrick Mahomes. So, kind of seeing that and just, looking into that game, I mean, it really could go either way at this point.
Now, Jake, commiserate with me for a second here. Maybe talk me off the ledge. My fantasy team relied heavily on John Brown and Cole Beasley the past couple weeks, and neither showed up for obvious reasons this past couple weeks, actually. What does this mean for Josh Allen? Is he finally come back down to earth? I mean, what is going on? What do we expect to see this Sunday? Or Monday, rather.
I see how Derek Carr tore him up last week, throwing to a Henry Ruggs and hitting Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller. And to be honest, the skill players are there for Josh Allen, so I could see it being something similar. I think it'll be a track meet. Not to mention the Bills get Trey White back, so that defense shouldn't be as bad as they were last week. So all things considered. But I actually like the Bills to win this game. I'm not going to lie. I'm picking the Chiefs to lose 2 in a row. I'm going down on that, son.
Listen, in fantasy perspective too, I'm big on Gabriel Davis. Like, I've been watching him the past couple of weeks. He had a touchdown taken back from him last week. The dude runs all the routes, big, long, physical, athletic guy with good body control. He's one that I'm kind of looking at right now because with the Cole Beasley injuries and John Browns and all that, he's one that I'm looking at to kind of really solidify himself as the 2 or 3 in that offense over the next 3 or 4 weeks. I really like him.
Oh, no question. They were talking about it last week. Brown wasn't 100%, so Gabriel Davis was getting more and more targets as the game went on. Even Isaiah McKenzie scored a touchdown last week. But all things considered, it's the Stephon Diggs show in that receiver core, and everyone else is just accompaniment for now.
Guys, you're not making me feel a whole hell of a lot better about my fantasy team. Now, a guy
I'm not a nice human being.
My bad.
No, a guy who shouldn't be feeling good about himself. We're going to loop back now to the original breaking story of Le'Veon Bell. How we even got to this point to begin with. Adam Gase, your little egomaniac down there in New York, New Jersey. How is he not fired at this point? What is it gonna take? Grant, you hit me with your thoughts.
Man, I honestly have no idea. Like, you're talking about a dude that probably puts his shoes on the wrong feet, and in my opinion, he's probably got something over on ownership or management or something. There's no way that look at all the other OCs, DCs throughout the league, college coaches, everybody. This guy is a complete dummy, like just flat out dummy. And you look at how many people he's ran out. I mean, you're talking about the Jets were on their way. I mean, you got Sam Darnold, good young quarterback, just need to put the pieces around him. Robbie Anderson leaves. Everybody's like, oh, he's not going to be the man. I mean, he looks pretty damn good down in Carolina. Then you also look at, Prez. I mean, you're talking about the best young safety in the game. And, you don't build around him. You don't want to pay that guy. Like, dude, what are you thinking? And the fact that he has that much control over his roster, speaks a lot. And I don't know if it's because, Douglas being a newer GM, he came from the Ravens pipeline. We all know that. But I don't know if it's because of him being a newer GM and he doesn't have as much of a hold or allowed to have as much of an opinion. I don't know. It's weird. It doesn't make sense. They completely blew that team up. I feel bad for Jets fans. I'm not even gonna lie. It's like, man, anything. I mean, you look, Leonard Williams, Robbie Anderson, Jamal Adams, now Le'Veon Bell, and for what? To sign a bunch of cast-offs from the Ravens practice squad just because they wore purple one day? Like that whole team is a mess right now, and man, they have a lot of things to do. But I don't know how the hell that dude has a job, man. I mean, I'd have been fired weeks ago.
Jake, obviously, all of us here, we're not Jets fans, and yet we're irrationally angry at what's going on in the Meadowlands with both teams, but especially with the Jets. Um, Talk to me. Will Joseph Vincent Flacco ever win a game for the New York Jets? Among other thoughts. Go.
I love the man and what he did in 2012, but no. No.
I was expecting you to gas me up there.
All due respect, he has nothing to work with. I mean, which is worse? The players he has to work with the Jets this year or what he had to work with in 2017?
Is that a hypothetical question you asked me to answer because you know what the answer is going to be?
I'm just saying they're very comparable right now. This is not a good situation.
I mean, look, I'm going to interject for a second here. We know the Jets are a terrible organization from top to bottom, and I was kind of hoping that Flacco would come in and maybe mess around and win some games and, kind of ruin that little party that they have going on over there, that Adam Gase countdown, maybe save his job another year. But at this point, I mean, he is an insult to professional football and the game of football in and of itself at all levels. I don't understand how someone like this could be in power. So, Jake, throwing this back to you, let's go with a hypothetical. Do you think you could win a game with the New York Jets?
As a head coach?
As a coach, yes.
I give myself a shot only because I'd be throwing out every single gadget play known to man and just trying to steal one from whoever was playing against me and hope they just decide to overlook me and not game plan for me. That's your only way of really doing anything. And Adam Gase doesn't seem to have those up his sleeve. I mean,
I'm sensing the frustration here because it's just maddening. Now, Grant, I'll give you, in the interest of fairness, an opportunity to respond as well. 30 seconds or less. Tell me, do you think you, as a head coach, could win a game with the New York Jets as is?
Hell yeah, Danny O'Shea and the Little Giants took out the Cowboys. All we got to do is run some annexation of Puerto Rico and get the ice box out there, and we'll be all right. I mean, it's an NFL game with NFL talent. There's always a possibility. I mean, that's what coordinators are for. I'll just boss them around and tell them what I want to run or pass. But no, at the end of the day, it's all about schemes, matchups, preparation, and, Adam Gase doesn't have it.
There's a lot that he doesn't have hair among one of those things. But moving on, no offense to the follically challenged listeners out there, let's break down some of the games that we feel we should spotlight this upcoming weekend. Now, this one burns me to consider a highlight of the weekend. I kind of hope that Heinz Field just implodes and that there's no conclusion to this game. But we have to talk about the battle for the AFC North. Steelers, Browns, this coming Sunday. Grant, your thoughts on this atrocious display that we call professional football?
I mean, somebody's got to win, I guess. Even though, I mean, we could get a tie going on. That's what's leading the NFC East right now. But, I mean, as far as matchup, I mean, I think it's going to be a pretty good matchup. I think Claypool's got a lot of hype right now, but, he had a big game, a couple weeks ago, kind of disappeared for a little bit, then has another big game. I think it's all about, they were just the preparation of the game itself. I think it's going to come down to, it's cliche and it always goes around. You see it on ESPN, you see it on all the major networks. It's going to come down to Baker. What Baker's going to show up, Chubb not being there, to have that kind of two-headed monster. Can Kareem Hunt carry the load again? Can he run between the tackles? Chubb was good at, going inside, bouncing out, running off tackle, those types of things. Kareem Hunt was, he was the icing on the cupcake with those swing passes and, lining up in the slot. But, I think that I'm going to take the Browns in this one personally. Simply just for the fact that, since we beat the brakes off of them week 1, I mean, they've played some pretty good football. I mean, um, a lot better competition than the Steelers have played, and I think that's why I'm taking them, because I've seen the Browns grow every week as a team. And as far as playmaking, Odell's back, quote unquote. Wonder where he's been, but he's making plays again. They're running trick plays. They're having fun again. They're not over pressing it, calling 4 Super Bowls in a row. They're having fun again. I think the Steelers are getting a lot more credit for what they really are. But I could totally see this game going the Browns' way. And honestly, I hope it does, man. I hope it does. I just want the Steelers fans to just get humbled, because I know we're going to handle the Browns again, but I just like for them just to shut up, man. Like,
Jake, your thoughts on this? I don't even want to call it this. This highlight of the weekend. It's just I feel dirty now. You just go, Jake. Go.
I mean, if you want an offensive term, you can always call this the North Korea Bowl because you're rooting for someone to bomb the stadium. Let's keep it real. But that being said, I badly want to pick the Browns in this game, but I'm picking the Steelers only because the Browns are kind of beat up. Wyatt Teller didn't practice today. Jarvis Landry still hasn't practiced all week. Odell got sent home because he's sick. Who knows what that is? Maybe he has COVID. Maybe he has something else. Maybe it's some weird illness that keeps him out on Sunday. Because they're so banged up, I'm taking the Steelers. Not to mention, the Browns have had hyped up games before and they've fallen up short. That's their history. So all things considered, to be the man, whoa, you got to beat the man. And until they do it, I ain't picking the Browns to win a big game like this. I'm taking Pittsburgh at Heinz Field.
I feel so conflicted with that Ric Flair reference. I want to hug you, but at the same time, I want to slap you for picking Pittsburgh because you never pick Pittsburgh. But in this case, I'm going with Cleveland simply for rooting interests. If Cleveland beats Pittsburgh, all of a sudden, top place in the AFC North automatically goes to Baltimore should they defeat the Eagles, which we'll cover later in this podcast. And quite frankly, I could care less about either team. The only problem is if they both tie, that actually works out in their favor, especially if the Ravens lose. So I'm going Cleveland. That's 2-1 right there. But moving on to the AFC, we have another. This is the under the radar matchup is what I'm going to call it. But in the AFC South, you've got Houston visiting the Tennessee Titans. A battle of master versus student. You have interim head coach Romeo Crennel going up against Tennessee Titans head coach Mike Vrabel, both formerly of New England as coach and player, and then fellow coaches in Houston. What do we think about this matchup? Grant, I'll start with you.
I think it's a pretty solid matchup as a whole. I mean, the only thing that I would think that is that it's a divisional matchup. Titans go and have to play the Steelers next week, but it's in Nashville. But they do play the Steelers next week, and then so it's a divisional game. It's always going to take it serious. And that's the thing, just like we talked about earlier with the Chiefs-Raiders game, is like divisional games, anything can happen. I mean, we've seen the worst of the worst in a division compete with the best of the best in a division just because of it simply being a divisional game. I like what, as smug as he is Mike Vrabel. He has his team ready to play football. I mean, I was completely impressed that they came out after having that many days off and they were clicking on all cylinders. I mean, offensive line, defensive line, special teams, secondary. I mean, Malcolm Butler, where the hell's he been since the Seahawks Super Bowl? Like, I mean, he had 2 picks and it's like, it's almost like they were pissed off. Like the whole country pissed them off to call them out for their own stupidity, which is its own kind of mind-boggling situation. But at the end of the day, it's like, man, it's like, you were off for that long. You weren't even supposed to be practicing, but you came out clicking like that. And I don't know if that's a testament to them or damn, the Bills just didn't even show up. And that's kind of where this game is going to go to. And I think that the Texans, they play hard. I just don't think they're there. I spoke on last week about potentially them having, a little bit of motivation with, coaching changes sometimes. Cornell's a player's coach. picking it up a little bit to kind of get that edge, get that mid-season kind of boost, that nos kick. But I don't think it's going to be enough for the Titans. I mean, the Titans are a tough football team. You get King Henry rolling. I mean, I don't know who's going to stop him. I mean, I still need to go hit up Earl Thomas and see if maybe he feels a little bit better now because he's not the meme for him anymore. We got our man Josh Norman that just decided that he was going to go ahead and put the cape on and try to fly out to Krypton. But Tennessee just does so many things well, and the second that you take anybody out of the box, they're just going to pound and pound and pound and pop 7, 12, 15 yards a pop. They're just going to wear you down, and they're a tough team because in the second half of games, that's what hurts you. We heard, the Ravens talk about it. They asked Greg Roman about Gus Bus, and they're like, hey, he's our closer. You get a team on their heels, and they have to play comeback, and you play ball control, and you just sit there and pound the rock, not even getting to third downs, and you're just running over them. They're going to play back to back to back. So at that point, you've already completely diminished their will to win. And that's just something like the Titans do. And I mean, Deshaun's a great quarterback, but I just think that the Titans just have too much going for them. I'm picking them to win this game. And also, definitely look out for, I'm interested to see, when Corey Davis comes back. I haven't really seen much on that personally, but A.J. Brown looked really good, man. And he picked up right where he left off.
Nice. Now, Jake, are we ready to crown the Titans here? What do you think?
As kings of the AFC South, I'm willing to do that. Going into the season, I like the Colts, but then Phillip Rivers reminded everybody he's Phillip Rivers and can't play anymore. So I'm rolling with the Titans for that, and I'm rolling for the Titans with this game. Not rooting for them, but I'm picking them to win. That was a nice story last week. Romeo Crennel getting his win against the Jaguars, all the celebration. That's all fine and good, but they're about to get punched in the mouth by some grown-ass men. Tennessee's a good team. They got a big physical defensive line. The linebackers will hit you. They're not great in coverage, but they can hit you at least. And not to mention having to stop Derrick Henry. That's fine for the first couple quarters, first half. Third quarter comes around, you're not trying to tackle a grown-ass man who's 6'3" and 245, who makes Mark Ingram look like a damn Teddy Graham by comparison. All things considered, not to mention for all you fantasy cats out there, look for Ryan Tannehill this week. The Texans are the only team in the NFL to not have an interception this season. Roll with Tannehill. He'll hit A.J. Brown. He'll hit Jonnu Smith. He's a nice little stream, especially if you have someone like Breeze or Justin Herbert or Russell Wilson in particular on the bye.
All right. Now, I'm going to go with the Texans in an upset here, their second win in a row, and I really think Roman Crennel is going to turn things around. But I don't know. I'm not comfortable with saying that Tennessee is as good as their record, but that's just me. I think I need to see one more game out of them. Now, moving over to the NFC side of the things, we have the game of the week, I will say, at least Fox is advertising it as such. We have the Packers facing off against the Buccaneers, Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady. Grant, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on this game?
Match of future Hall of Famers. We're about to see who's got the juice. No, I mean, Aaron Rodgers is playing hot right now. I mean, he's pretty much, looking like old Aaron Rodgers from 2008. Like he's definitely coming in swinging. He's definitely, playmakers aside. I mean, Devontae Adams has been out. He's got his new toy and Tanyan coming out making some plays, but what's going to happen when Devontae Adams comes back? Lazard's out. He had the core surgery. Buccaneers, interested to see, how they kind of continue to develop. I feel like they've been, kind of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde week in and week out. They have the potential to have a solid defense. Secondary's, super sketchy. I'm a big fan of Tyler Johnson. He was one of my favorite receivers in the draft, regardless of round, out of Minnesota. He finally got his burn last week, and he looked really good. Very fluid routes, got off the line, made some tough contested catches, hands guy. I think that he's going to have a really nice future, and he's the type of receiver that would really click well with Tom Brady. And you could see that he was already really getting kind of comfortable with him right off the bat. Scotty Miller, goodness, man. I started Scotty Miller. Dude didn't even get a catch. How are you going to goose egg me, man? You got all this hype. How are you going to goose egg me? But that aside, I think that, Rojo looked good. I'm going to take the Packers just because A-Rod just looks like he's on another planet right now. Everybody's talking about Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson's the luckiest cat I've ever seen in my life. That dude gets more breaks in a Kit Kat factory. And just looking at everything, I'm going to take the Packers. Defense is kind of suspect, but I don't think that the Buccaneers scare me enough. Mike Evans has been, non-existent completely this year. Mr. 2-yard, 2 touchdowns. A lot of that goes into it, but I'm going to take the Packers.
Nice. All right. So I'm inclined to agree, but we'll get into that in a second. Jake, your thoughts on this matchup?
Oh, I'm going contrarian. Where's that damn Tampa Bay Buccaneers music from the 80s? That Hey Hey Tampa Bay song. Because I'm taking the Bucks.
Dreamsicles.
Chris Godwin's practicing this week. He comes back. Brady was targeting him more than anybody week 1. Then he goes down. Then week 4 goes. He gets targeted some more, gets hurt. I mean, Mike Evans may not be playing well, but at the same time, he's had defenses clamping down against him. You bring in someone like Godwin, as he's healthy, Evans can explode. Not to mention that front is real nice. They're not giving up anything on the ground. Like I believe they're still averaging 2.7 yards per carry for any running back. So the benefits of having a play action passing game this week will be non-existent for Rodgers and the Pack. I'm taking the Bucks without a doubt.
I'm surprised that you're sticking with old man Brady, though I guess this is a battle of geriatrics again. Not nearly as bad as the Saints and Bucks earlier in the season, but I just don't see it. With Tampa Bay, with the potential that they've got with Evans and Godwin, not to mention, you've got O.J. Howard, who's outshining Gronk somehow. I didn't foresee that happening coming into the season.
I think he's out for the season.
Oh, is he really? Wow.
Yeah, for his Achilles. It might have been last week or the week before, but he's out. So now they're stuck with Gronk and Cameron Brate.
That also shows you how little interest there really is in Tampa, despite all the star power right there. And it just makes me wonder, with the expectations having been sky high for Tampa, being Super Bowl favorites, at least as the NFC representatives, are they really going to be able to keep up the momentum that they've picked up in the NFC South for the remainder of the year? I don't know. We'll see. But, speaking of injuries, I'm glad you mentioned that. And I'm glad that, my little brain fart right there could segue us into this next topic. We all saw, unfortunately, Dak Prescott suffered I believe it was an ankle fracture. Was that right? Ankle break last week, and he is out for the season. Recovery time is usually roughly a calendar year, though with athletes you never know. But the Dallas Cowboys now have to turn to Andy Dalton, and unfortunately comes at the worst possible time because they are under the bright lights of Monday Night Football hosting the Arizona Cardinals and Kyler Murray. Andy Dalton, I don't have the numbers right now, but he has not performed well in primetime. Grant, what do you think is going to go down on Monday night?
I think the Red Rocket is going to come out and cause problems. What better, if you look around the NFL, what other backup quarterback would you want in this situation? You want a veteran guy that's been there. I think his problem in Cincinnati was a lot of pressure. He constantly, should we draft a quarterback this year? Should we do this? Should we do that? That gets in the psyche of a player and of a quarterback especially. The fact that he didn't have to be the man there, he could kind of sit back, learn. They have a very wide open offense. My concerns with him would be, the kind of tossing around, mixing and mashing of the offensive line, injuries, things like that, like Leo Collins, Tyron Smith, they're kind of beat up. I think Baez is going to be a good center. I think he played really well. But I think it's feasible. The Cardinals don't scare anybody. They have D-Hop. Kenyon Drake has done nothing. I think Kyler Murray is severely overrated, and I get hate on it all the time. Great dude, great quarterback, very athletic, but people act like he's the second coming of Jesus, and it's like, dude, what are you looking at? And the guy has weapons. Tons. D-Hop is all you need to say, really. The guy was almost a Raven. I don't want to talk about it because it gives me nightmares for at least a week when I talk about it. But the fact that I would have rather not know that he was that close to being a Raven, that stuff just needs to stay in-house. Leave that alone. But that's a side point. But just to look at that, I mean, just alone, I think he can make throws. They have CD running the slot, who looks phenomenal. He looks like the second coming of DeAndre Hopkins. Personally, you look at his body, his build, his body control, his hands, his routes, his everything. He's just fluid. He makes the game look easy. And if you think about it, um, it there was no preseason. I mean, you're looking at, this is technically like when the rookies, this is technically like their second game of the regular season, or first, be the first, yeah, second game of the regular season. So it's like, these guys didn't get training camp like that. They didn't get preseason games. And the fact that he's coming and balling out with two bona fide stars with him, I think that the weapons are there, and all he has to do is not try to do too much and just manage the game plan. Preparation, I keep saying it today, but it's so important. But especially in games like this, when you have that backup quarterback that's a veteran that comes in, can satisfy the offense. Don't put the pressure on them. Just prepare the game. Stick to your game plan. Don't get outside of it. Don't try to do too much. Don't get cute. And I think the Cowboys can actually, surprisingly enough, win this game. I mean, their defense is terrible. I mean, I'm talking, it's probably, I feel bad because I got some buddies that are diehard Cowboys fans, and I root for, Cowboys in those games for them. But when I look at it, I'm like, dude, this defense is atrocious. And it's like, where do you begin? But honestly, it's a toss up for me, but I'm going to take Dallas, just because I want to see what the Red Rocket does. I'm hopping on the train, and we're going to see where it takes. But I think it's going to be a pretty solid matchup. Interested to see how they come out.
Now, Jake, do you think Dallas goes all the way to the moon with the Red Rocket, of course? Do you think that the Cowboys can match their offensive output that they had under Dak and do just enough to stop the air raid offense on defense in Arlington this Sunday or this Monday?
Well, they may not be as prolific as they would be with Dak under center, but at the same time, I'm not counting them out of the NFC East race for that matter. One, it's a bad division, but two, Andy Dalton historically has always been good as the pieces around him. When he had Marvin Jones, Mohamed Sanu, and AJ Green to throw to, along with little Gio Bernard in the backfield, they were good. They won division, what, 2 out of 3 years back in 2013 and 2015. If
Yeah,
you give
yeah.
him pieces and you give him a line to protect him, which the Cowboys do, even though they did lose Tyron Smith for the season, which that sucks. But at the same time, they shouldn't have to worry that much about a pass rush. You don't have Chandler Jones rushing you because he's out for the season with a torn biceps. So all things considered, I am taking the Cowboys this week. I want to see Kyler Murray produce because that's one of my fantasy quarterbacks. He's my quarterback in a couple of leagues. Let him keep running around. That's cool. I'm not tripping off of that. He's actually the leading rusher among quarterbacks this season with rushing yards and touchdowns. But that being said, I ain't picking him to beat the Cowboys. That's what it is. I'm taking Dallas.
I still see Monday night being a shootout, and for the record, I keep forgetting what days and times these games are just because of the schedule being turned upside down by all of these COVID violations. But I do think that under the Monday night lights, Andy Dalton's going to get a win in his first game as a starter for the Cowboys. I think, again, it will be a shootout, high scoring, but at the end, I think Dalton will do just enough to bring home the dub and to upset the balance of things in the terrible NFC East, which on that note, this next game, near and dear to our hearts, may very well upset the balance of both the NFC East and AFC North, because we've got our Baltimore Ravens visiting the Philadelphia Eagles, your first place Philadelphia Eagles, who, if I've talked to many Eagles fans, shout out to the Matt and Frack show. Frack on there is a huge Eagles fan. And every single time this matchup has come up since 2008, everyone brings up the Kevin Kolb 108-yard interception thrown to Ed Reed. And that highlight has been played ad nauseum all week. So enough about the past, looking to the present. Grant, what do you see this coming Sunday for our Ravens?
I think this is a good opportunity to kind of get the offensive identity on track. I think it's enough into the season where we need to start solidifying that. The Eagles are a pretty beat up team. I mean, you stop, Miles Sanders, you're pretty set. I mean, they're kind of beat up on the outside. Ertz has been kind of banged up. Goddard's still out. The Ravens have, I mean, they're top to bottom. I mean, yeah, the Chiefs keep stacking, but top to bottom, if you look at special teams, defense, every position, depth at the positions, offense, depth at the positions and offense, I think the Ravens have the most talented offense in football. And we just got to put it together. I mean, everybody's putting a lot on Lamar. There's a lot of pressure going into the post MVP season. There's so many expectations. I mean, he's on the cover of Madden. He's got his first Oakley deal. And I don't think that any of that distracts him at all. But I think that people need to just understand that the dude is 23 years old and he is already an MVP and he's taken the league by storm. People talked about him like he's this 26-year-old, 27-year-old, 5-6 year vet or whatever. I mean, it's like, man, this guy is in his. He hasn't even played 2 full seasons. If you calculate, coming into this 3rd season, he hasn't played 2 full seasons at all, and he's already an MVP, and a unanimous at that. I think that the defense continues to build. I think they absolutely feast. I look for the Ravens to just all out good. I would be surprised if we didn't get 3-4 turnovers again. Offensively, I want to see the ground game. I mean, it's redundant through Ravens Nation, but man, where is the ground game? You got Gus, you got JK, you got Mark Ingram. I mean, JK Dobbins gets a carry, chucks it 32 yards, running through people, keeping his feet churning. It doesn't see another rush the rest of the game. It's like we don't have an identity. It's like we have so many weapons in the backfield. There's not that identity. And it's like, dude, like simplify it. Like it's not anything. And I know teams are starting to game plan, more films coming out. They're looking at, playing more backside to prevent cutback lanes and things like that. But at the end of the day, there's so much talent. Obviously I'm going Ravens coming out on top, and I definitely I could see 2 touchdowns on that side, but I think it has to be that. I don't think this can be a game that comes down to the wire or, Lord forbid lose, which I don't think is going to happen, but it's any given Sunday. But I do see the Ravens win, and I do think that this needs to be that kind of next step into the season where we're getting into that 2nd quarter of the season.
Now, Jake, before I get to you, I will point out, I believe entering this week, and I have to double check the analytics, but the Ravens are 2nd in average rushing yards per game, but the numbers don't match up with the eye test because a lot of that is skewed by either garbage time runs or 2 big runs per game, so on and so forth. But the Ravens have yet to have a 100-yard rusher individually through these first few weeks. They have yet to dominate in the fashion that they had. They've not achieved the offensive balance that they once did, averaging, 200 yards passing and 200 yards rushing per game, something to that effect. So obviously we expected regression from last year, but not to this level. But I will say I do give them a pass for now, if only because with the lack of preseason, you've got the lack of on-field chemistry and live game action, so you're going to expect some rust and some sloppiness. But I will be more concerned if we continue to see the sloppiness and rust going into weeks 8 and 9 and so on and so forth, even coming out of the bye. But there's a big matchup looming around the corner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, but we don't want to look ahead just yet, and neither should the team. Now, Jake, your thoughts on who's going to win this game this Sunday and why it's going to be the Ravens?
Oh, I'm not taking Philly. Come on now. Going into the year, I think if they were 5-0, I would think this was a potential upset game because the Eagles' defensive line is still good. That's the one piece of their defense that's still playing very well. But that being said, come on now. I'm not taking them above the Ravens. I've been down on Carson Wentz all season. He has nobody to throw to. And even when he had people to throw to, they're all track stars who couldn't catch. So there's no good reason to me for the Eagles winning this game unless Fletcher Cox just comes out and destroys, has 4 or 5 sacks because he dominates whoever's in front of him. I don't necessarily see that happening. I think he'll have an impact, but I'm not going to go that damn far. But Carson Wentz has thrown the most interceptions in the league this season. And having to throw the ball against the secondary with Marcus Peters, with Marlin, with Jimmy Smith, I don't see it. I don't see how the Eagles can win this game unless they're ready and they call nothing but quick hitters to beat the blitz and the DBs are playing 5-10 yards off the line of scrimmage. Then okay, they can beat the rush then. But that being said, I'm not picking Philly to win this game, regardless of my homer status. Baltimore should win and win easy. Their real test is going to come after the bye week because that's when the schedule tightens up.
No pun intended, of course. It's Tennessee Titans later on in the slate. Now, before we wrap things up, I feel in the interest of healthy conversation and whatnot, I should devote some time and allow you guys to talk about what you want to talk about. Because I'm sick of running the show, to be perfectly honest with you. So we're going to put 2 minutes on the clock for each of you. We're going to start with you, Grant. When I say go, bring up a topic that you want to discuss in 2 minutes or less that has been just burning and just generally gnawing at you all week. And clock starts now. Go.
Well, I'm going to keep it real. I'm about to pop out my first Carolina Panthers article this weekend since we'll begin starting to write for them for us here. And my dark horse to win the NFC South is the Carolina Panthers. Bold take, get it, whatever. But the way that they're gelling together right now and progressing every week, it seems like they love playing for Matt Rule. And he's always been, we've heard about him being a player's coach and, how he can, what things he can do within an offense. Teddy Bridgewater looks great. Robbie Anderson looks great. DJ Moore's showing out. Curtis Samuel's making catches. People are getting the ball to him. That was his biggest problem last year. They win this game this weekend against the Bears, and the Buccaneers lose to the Packers. They're even. We don't know what we're getting out of the Saints. Who knows? Michael Thomas is a head case right now. Can't even get on the field. He's punching teammates and stuff to get suspended by his team. Like, that's not a leader, dude. And, without that, the other side of that's the Falcons. I don't think they're a threat at all. They're a complete dumpster fire right now. So, I just want to talk about that. The Carolina Panthers have shocked me, shocked the NFL world, shocked everybody, because everybody was saying at the beginning of the season they would lose to a college team. And who were they going to have? Christian McCaffrey goes down, boom. Then what? Everybody's really saying it. Then they're going to get the first pick overall, this, and this. And then here come the Jets strolling in. But all in all, I just want to talk about my dark horse to potentially win the NFC South is the Carolina Panthers.
Hey, and I could definitely see that. There is a lot of attrition there in the NFC South. And again, I am sticking to my guns and saying Brady is not going to keep the Bucs afloat for the remainder of the year. So that was perfectly well done. Less than 2 minutes. Good job.
I've been practicing. I appreciate you. I'm over here.
All right. So now, Jake, we're going to move over to you. We're going to put 2 minutes on the clock. Tell us what's been burning in your mind. Go.
What's been burning on my mind? Kirk Cousins. I'm telling you right now. I'm not gonna lie. I don't mind him as a quarterback. I actually kind of like him because he's one of those dudes. He's not as good as people will make him out to be, at least his supporters. But for the detractors, he's not as bad as he's made out to be. And he'll remind you, he's like, "Hey, I'm not that bad. How do you like me now?" So I'm like, you know what? I like that defiant attitude. Let's go, Kirk Cousins. So then, going into the year, one of my bold predictions for the season, Dalvin Cook would be the RB1 in fantasy. I was close because he's RB2 right now, but he's going to miss this week. Adam Thielen would be top 5, and he's just right outside the top 5. And then Kirk Cousins would be a top 10 fantasy quarterback. I wanted to be defiant against everyone who has him at QB 25. And look, he's roughly QB 25 right now, so I was dead ass wrong. So I'll tell you that. So that's what's been bothering me. You played the Seahawks, and you bummed out, giving me 14 fantasy points. He's not my quarterback, mind you, but still, what's wrong with you? You have Justin Jefferson, you have Adam Thielen, you have Gary Kubiak calling the offense, who got Joe Flacco's best season statistically, and you're giving me this? Get out of here.
Did you see how he threw at his gender reveal party? So that should have solidified everything.
It did.
And the worst part was someone actually put that on the internet. So it wasn't even the fact that that's what he did for the reveal, but the fact that it was recorded and someone thought it was a good idea to put it on the internet. Come on, man.
You got to prepare. You need a backup ball. Like reshoot. You know what I'm saying? Like the confidence to nail it on the first time and completely just deuce it. Lord have mercy, man. Hope that wasn't a slant route.
Hey, unlike this podcast, that's the reason why Hollywood has more than one take, whereas we just go live, unedited, and uncut all the way through. So, maybe Kirk Cousins was feeling a little risky, feeling a little dangerous, but yeah, I think that did more harm than good for him. So, I don't know. We'll see. But, gentlemen, with that said, we covered a lot of ground, and I am fairly confident that we'll see a much better slate of games this weekend than we did last weekend, because I tell you what, I was bored watching some of those games, but that's neither here nor there. That's not for me to decide. That's for you to watch. So with that said, thank you for joining us for the first ever edition of the Zone 32 podcast, brought to you by Neutral Zone Infraction. I'm Max Mikado. He's Grant Derflinger. He's Jake Miller. We'll be back next week with another edition right here on NZI. Follow us on Twitter at NZI Properties. And as always, thanks for listening. Have a great night.
Max, Grant, Jake.
Zone 32, only on NeutralZoneInfractions.com.
NZI Properties.